Namastu.
Namastu.
Which simply means I bow to the divinity in you. Welcome to another Sunday service here at the Qubtic Church of the Black Messiah. I am Pastor Cleveland Elias III, aka Anku Sarah, and it's always another opportunity for us to delve deeper into the mysteries of atonism on this Resurrection Sunday in the Qubtic Church. Now, before I get started with the sermon for today, I just want to be clear about a few things with regards to what you're going to hear today. You're going to be introduced to words that maybe you've never heard before. You're going to be introduced to ideas that may or may not have been shared with you before. But we just ask that you keep an open heart, an open mind, an open spirit, and most importantly, question everything that we're going to bring to you today. Because at no point do we expect for anyone in our congregation or in the TV audience to just believe what we're saying. We never ask that. We always ask, just as the servant John did in the book of 1 John chapter 4, that you test every spirit. Test every spirit to make sure that it is of the Most High Heavenly One. So, that being the case, welcome. It is indeed a wonderful day. It is a Resurrection Sunday. We want to say Happy Easter to all of those that are celebrating Easter on this day, because we also appreciate the fact that all of us have the right to observe this day as we see fit. And as we look at this as a Resurrection Sunday, it is indeed a Resurrection Sunday for many around the world in various ways. In the Qubtic Church of the Black Messiah, it's important to understand that all people have a story. All people have a story. The Greeks, the Romans, the Hebrews, the East Indians, the Japanese, the Chinese, all have a story. And in this day and time, the world, in some way, shape, or form, follows the story of usually one of those cultures that I just called out. But the question has to be asked continuously: where's the story of the African? Where's the story of the so-called black man, the so-called black woman, as it relates to the scriptures, as it relates to life, as it relates to culture? Because everybody has a story, and everybody's culture does for them, or I should say, it allows them to become who they're supposed to be. It allows you to reach your full potential. If you're not within your culture, then you are a slave to someone else's culture, and in layman's term, you are essentially in hell. Alright? So, we want to start out by, since I mentioned hell, mentioning the fact that the word hell, or this place hell, is not just some fiery pit deep down into the earth that people go after they die, and the devil is there with his pitchfork, and he's waiting for all of those who did not repent, who were not saved, etc., etc. For those who believe that, oh Lord. For those who believe that, that is their right. However, if we look up this word hell etymologically, now this is a teaching church now. We preach so that we may teach. Etymologically, when you talk about etymology, you're talking about the study of words. Why is the study of words so important? Because in the beginning, thank you, in the beginning was the what? Word. The word. So if we don't take the time to study the words, then how are we to ever see what the Most High Heavenly One has placed for us to see? The word hell essentially means to cover over. Alright? Don't believe me? Check it out. What does this have to do with the hell that many people talk about with regards to fire and brimstone and the devil and so on and so forth? To cover up a person's or people's culture and to hide it from them is to give them help. This is what's been done to us as a people for so many years, and so far as our story has not been told. Our story has not been brought to us in such a way that we could feed off of it and live off of it and reach our full potential. And therefore we suffer. We are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Not for a lack of not going to church, you know. Not for a lack of not wearing the biggest hat in church, or having the biggest Bible, or saying the longest prayer. That's not why we destroy. We destroy, as the book of Hosea says, for a lack of knowledge. We've become lazy. We've become stagnant. Mediocrity is the standard in our country, in this Bahamas land. And so today we're going to speak about those people that wanted us to live above and beyond the standard of mediocrity. And in doing so, they became sacrificial lambs. You see? In the book of Matthew, we learn something very important. In Matthew chapter 10, it speaks about exactly who has been saved. Now, this is something that, you know, I'm on Facebook a lot, and I see people putting up their posters, and people are celebrating this period and the fact that Jesus or Yahshua would have died for their sins, and it is finished. It is complete. It is done. For Jesus, not for you. We take on this attitude that, oh yes, because someone else died and they took all of my sins, then I'm free now. And again, you have the right to believe that. But let's get to reality. Let's get to reality. The book of Matthew chapter 10 says, he that endureth to the end shall be saved. You got to make it to the end. You got to endure. You got to put in your own time. I always talk about it. You can't be the rookie joining the Lakers and bragging about all your championships. Kobe can tap you on the shoulder and be like, boss, did you help us put any of these banners up here? No, ride the bench, tell the coach put you in, and then when you could help us win one, then you could brag. Right? So today's message is, I'm asking everybody, have you picked up your cross? Jesus picked up his cross. He took his licks. He took his beating. He suffered. He cried. He sweat blood. He drank vinegar. He did all of the things that a sacrificial lamb does. But now, are you ready to do it? That's the question. There's a principle. There's a principle in physics known as inertia. Everybody say inertia. 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 That's just a big word for, or a word that maybe you haven't heard or have heard, that says a body that is at rest tends to stay at rest unless a force comes upon it and moves it, and the opposite to that is a body in motion will tend to stay in motion unless an opposing motion or force comes against it, equal or more to it, that either stop it or take it into the next direction. Inertia. Now, a lot of times we look at that as something that's just in physics. You know, we talk about things staying in motion with regards to the reality of it, staying in that motion. And it sounds like, oh, okay, yeah, this is just some National Geographic, some Discovery Channel stuff. But this also happens in the realm of society, insofar as if we keep doing something without ever being opposed, then we'll just keep doing it. I always tell the story about the lady who was making meatloaf, and she always make the meatloaf and she cut it in half and put it in 2 pans and place it in the oven. And her children asked her, "Mommy, why you always cutting up the meatloaf and putting it in 2 pans and place it in the oven?" "I don't know. That's what Mama used to do." Let's go ask Mama. "Mama, why you used to cut up the meatloaf in half and stick it in the oven?" She said, "I don't know. That's what my mama used to do." She would go to great-grandmammy. "Great-grandmammy, why you used to cut the meatloaf in half, right, before you make it and stick it in the oven?" So great-grandmammy say, "Well, my oven was too small to put the whole meatloaf in. So I used to cut it in half, bake one half, and then bake the next half." But because she never thought it necessary to explain it to her children, or her children weren't observant enough, they didn't pick up on it. And so that tradition kept going on and on and on, until the children asked the question, well, why? And that's what we're all about here in the Qubtic Church. We have to ask why. We have to know why certain things are being celebrated, and to what end are they being celebrated. This period of Easter is also the period of Passover. Alright? That's found in the book of Exodus chapter 12. Now, we're not going to get deep into that story. We did that last year. But I have to mention it because we've all read the story, or we've been in the play, in church, or in school, whereby the Israelites had to place the lamb's blood on their doorposts, so that when this angel, as it is told in the story, passes over, their firstborn children would not be killed. And they celebrate it as an act of them leaving Egypt, having been under slavery for so many years, and Moses leading them out of Egypt to safety, and eventually going into the wilderness and so on and so forth. Well, we have to question that. Oh, yeah, we can question it. Because Jesus questioned it. Right? So, I hope you have your Bibles with you today, because we're going to show you some stuff that relates to why we question it. The so-called Jews, let me just be clear about why I'm saying so-called. Before we even go to the book of John, let's go to the book of Revelation, chapter 2:9, and chapter 3:9. This is Yahshua, whom many call Jesus, speaking in Revelation, which, by the way, is the only book in the Bible that starts the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. This is the only book in the Bible that starts this way. Just Jesus' book. Alright? So, when I say so-called Jews, I'm not just trying to be controversial. Okay? I'm not being any more controversial than Jesus is or was. Revelation chapter 2 verse 9 says, "I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty," and in brackets it have, "but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogues of Satan." Furthermore, in Revelation chapter 3 verse 9 it says, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee." Okay? So, this isn't something that the Qubtic Church is making up with regards to the so-called Jew. There were those who were calling themselves Jews even in Jesus' time, that he understood or disagreed that they were indeed Jews. John chapter 8 is where we go into, because we have to, again, remember we're talking about Passover, the feast of the unleavened bread. So they said they didn't have time to wait for the bread to rise. They had to just roll up. So that's why it's feast of unleavened bread, right? John chapter 8. Jesus is having a conversation with some of these so-called Jews. We start at verse 31. Then said Yahshua to those Jews which believed on him, if ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed. So you got to continue in the word. The word is the key. I don't care how much someone's sweating and crying in the pulpit, or how loud the speaker is on the corner. Find the word. Understand? And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Everybody say set you free. It doesn't say set you free there. John chapter 8 verse 32 does not say ye shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. It says make you free. Because after you get the truth, then you have to do something with it. That's what we're doing today. We're doing something with it. Right? But here's where the lie comes to light with regards to whether or not these so-called Jews were actually slaves in Egypt. Verse 33, they answered him, we be Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, ye shall be made free? Uh-oh. But I thought y'all were slaves in Egypt. I guess they didn't get the memo. This was later on down the road. But you celebrating Passover, but you was never in bondage. So which is it? You see the games they playing with us? You understand what's going on? Okay. So we jump back to the book of Exodus now. Because I can touch it a little bit now. Because we got to understand what the truth of the matter is. We got to pick up our cross and just tell the truth. Tell the truth, shame the devil. Before we even get into Exodus, because we got to make it plain that these Jews were not there being enslaved. These were actually a group of people known as the Hyksos. Everybody say Hyksos? Hyksos. And these Hyksos are the Greeks, the Romans, the Hebrews, all combined, the Canaanite tribes. The Canaanite tribes. Okay? That were invading Africa. In the commentary, this is the King James Hebrew Greek Keyword Study Bible. Okay, it reads, Exodus is a Greek word which means departure, and is derived from ek, out of, and hudos, road. The Hebrew title, the first words of the Hebrew text, means and these are the names of. So that's two totally different things. The Hebrew saying these are the names of. The Greek saying Exodus. So again, discrepancy. We get back to the word. The book of Exodus describes the deliverance of the Israelites from Egypt, their journey to Mount Sinai, and the events that occurred during their sojourn there. The patriarch Jacob had brought his family to Egypt to avoid starvation. Okay. So these pagans had food. Okay. When the Hyksos invaded Egypt and gained political power, the descendants of Jacob were forced into slavery. When the who? When the Hyksos invaded Egypt. This is in the King James Study Version. I ain't making this up. The Qubtic Church ain't making this up. This is here. Right? When the Hyksos invaded Egypt and gained political power, the descendants of Jacob were forced into slavery. Now we got to be clear about who this Jacob is now. Because this Jacob now, that's another lie. Because the word Jacob means what? To supplant. To take somebody's place. To take the place of the original tribes of Ishmaelites Israelites and Midianites. One of those tribes being the tribe of Iuta that became Yahuda or Judah. Africans. Alright? Let's jump to Exodus 12. Because we have to be clear about this. There are those who would say they don't care what it said. They're going to believe what they're going to say. That's their right. Right? In Exodus 12 and 14, we'll just jump to 14 for now, because I'm jumping through so that we can get to understand what Resurrection Day is really about and what picking up your cross is really about. Exodus 12 and 14, and this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it as a feast by the ordinance forever. Now why do they point that out? Every time we as a people talk about our Holocaust, all of our ancestors that were killed in the Middle Passage, all of our ancestors that were raped, all of our cultures and our tongues and everything that was destroyed, when we talk about it, there's the question of, why don't you just get over it? Why don't you just move on? Why are you using that as an excuse? And I'm not saying that we should use it as an excuse any more than the Jews use it as an excuse. So they have a right to remind people of their Holocaust. Right? But they don't get over it. No, they don't. They still celebrate Passover. Because they say he was in slavery in Egypt, even though they can't prove it. Right? Even though they said they wasn't in bondage in the Bible. Right? Now how do we know? How do we further justify what we have said with regards to these things being untrue? Jump down to verse 37. In the Qubtic church we use the Strong's Concordance quite often because we need to get down to the word and understand exactly what's going on. Exodus 12 and 37, and the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot, that were men beside children. Verse 38 is what I want. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And what's this mixed seed that was moving out of Egypt? What do you mean by mix? I mean like some tall, some short, some fat, some skinny. And let's look at the word. The word there is Arab. Arab. Okay? And it means a mixture or mongrel race. A mixture or mongrel race. When these Hyksos invaded Africa, okay, they then began to try to become those that they were invading. They saw our beautiful culture. They saw our rites and our rituals and everything that we were about. And they said, we want this for us. And we, being the peaceful people that we were, figured, hey, we'll teach you too. The Most High is ever yielding, ever merciful. So we can teach you this too. Not knowing that they would turn on us, flip the script, oppress us, and then write a story about them being oppressed. And if we don't watch it, they'll do it again. You understand? You see, what's his name? Glenn Beck going up and try to take Martin Luther King Day. They trying to take Martin Luther King like he's us. Oh no. We got TV now. We just gotta look up on those rocks and see what was carved there. We can press play. You understand? They'll do it again if we're not careful. Alright? Now these Hyksos Jump down to verse 40. Jumping around, right? Verse 40 says, now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. So they had been in Egypt for 430 years. The reality is they had invaded a city by the name of Avaris for 430 years. When some sacrificial lambs had to step up and move them out of the way. Amos and Kamos are their names. You can write these down and look it up. Sons of Sekenin Ray the first. Okay, you can look these things up. We're not making up. There are no records of some Israelites being enslaved in Egypt. It's not there. Okay, so we start with Passover first. And that word, the death angel that they keep talking about, is not there in the Bible. The word there is plague. Because these invaders brought a plague in with them that you can read about in Leviticus 13 and 14 for leprosy. Okay? These Canaanite tribes. You're not making this up, this is in here. Alright? So, the whole idea of a mixed multitude is further seen. Let's go to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 19. We have to see this. We have to know the truth and make ourselves free. We have to. You there? Getting there? Isaiah chapter 19. Again, we jumping around. Well, I hope you got your pen with you in the pod. It reads, the burden of Egypt, verse 1. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. What is this talking about? Does this mean there's going to be a civil war? That's how some people would read it. It's going to be a civil war. God is going to come in and cause confusion. And that's because they're pagan worshippers and so on and so forth. That's not what it's saying. Alright? First of all, let's just be clear. In the Qubtic church, we don't consider ourselves Egyptians. We understand that our seed goes way before Egypt. The Egyptians were pagans. The Tamarians, everybody say Tamare. Tamare or Tamari is who we identify with. The ancient Babylonian Cushites of Shumer. Everybody say Shumer. Shumer. Or what is called Sumer. Sumer. Okay? This is our family. Alright? Those 12 tribes you're talking about in Revelation is talking about our family that existed throughout Africa, not just Egypt. They love to just play this Egypt game and then see what they're trying to do. Try to cut it out and make it. Well, that's not a part of Africa. That's part of the Middle East. I don't care what your socio-political map says. Look at the map and use common sense. If you go to Egypt, you can see the lines? No. You see the line? You ever see the line where one country starts and the next one stops? You ever saw that? You see some signs now. They may say, okay, you're entering, you know, when you go to America and you drive and you're entering South Carolina. But we never saw the line though. No. Stop to kind of look for it, it ain't there. You don't see the line, but for the Tropic of Cancer running through Long Island. They can mark it now, but there ain't no line there. All right, so don't be fooled into thinking that Egypt is not a part of Africa, or even thinking that everything great in Africa happened in Egypt. That's not what we're saying, right? Let's jump down to verse 18 of Isaiah chapter 19 so we can see who these other Egyptians were. Right? It says, in that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan. Uh-oh. So 5 cities in Egypt will be speaking the language of Canaan. Why? Because the Canaanites came in there. They invaded, just like they do everywhere around the world. Cultural diffusion. You have to do it our way. You're uncivilized. We have to civilize you. You understand what I'm saying? So they had the people speaking their own language and swear to the Lord of hosts, one shall be called the city of destruction. Alright? So there was 5 cities in Egypt speaking the language of Canaan. It's speaking about the original Hamareans warring against the invaders as well as those who went and followed behind them. Just like in today's world, you have puppet leaders. Just like in today's world, you have people who have the mentality of the beast. That was happening then too. Alright? But then let's jump further down into Isaiah chapter 19. Because we got to make it clear now how God was seeing the original Israelites, the original Egyptians, the original Assyrians. Verse 22 of Isaiah chapter 19. And the Lord shall smite Egypt. He shall smite and heal it. He shall smite and heal it. He shall smite and heal it. So if you got cancer, that chemo is smite you first. Gotta be strong enough to take it. And then you heal. So if there's a cancer in the land, then God has sent his own form of chemotherapy. Which in this day and time is truth. If you ain't strong enough to handle the truth, I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for you. Right? It says, and the Lord shall smite Egypt, and he shall smite and heal it, and they shall return even to the Lord, and he shall be entreated of them, and shall heal them. In that day shall there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrian shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptian unto Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. In that day shall Israel be the third. The third. We is God's chosen people. If you touch Israel, watch out. 6-day war. What the Bible says. He's the third. I'm not pointing this out to say who's better than who, you know. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we've been lied to for so long that we keep perpetuating this lie. Therefore, inertia sets in, wherefore the lie just goes unopposed until equal force or a force greater than that force can push the lie out of the way. That force is called truth. Right? It says, in that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, my inheritance. And we don't have time today to go into who these tribes of Ishmaelites, Israelites, and Midianites exactly were. But we can say that all of them come out of the seed of what is called Abraham. Okay, but most importantly, the women that gave birth. Hagar, who was an Egyptian woman, gave birth to Ishmael. Right? And then you have Sarah, who eventually Jacob comes out of that line. And then you have Keturah, that Midian comes out of that line by way of Abraham being with his 3 wives. Alright? So it's important for us in this day and time to appreciate exactly what was going on. I had to set the context for you so that we could be clear about some things. Alright? Now let's move on. In the Qubtic church, we understand that you have to be saved by the blood. You're all smiling. You're so quiet today. Whoever the camera. You have to be saved by the blood. In order for there to be a resurrection, there has to be some kind of life already present in that which appears to be dead. Now, why is this Resurrection Sunday in the Qubtic church? And what kind of resurrection are we talking about? The resurrection that we are talking about is seen in Revelation chapter 20. Revelation 20 verse 6. Blessed and holy is he or she. And all she in here. Because the Greeks, they don't like women. Go to their countries, they got a bunch of naked statues of men. They don't like women, right? That's their business. But it should say she as well. Right? Blessed and holy is he or she that has part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power. But they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. So there's a first resurrection, which means there's a first death. That's important to know, because I got news for you. Once the physical body gets to the point where rigor mortis is taking over, there's no physical resurrection. They could find some cells and clone from you. They're doing that today. And like I said, once rigor mortis sets in, there ain't no resurrection. You could lose your heartbeat, they could grab them paddles and say, clear, pop, hit you, and you come back. I guess that's a form of resurrection too. Right? Yeah? But we got to understand and appreciate that God has a law, and he's not going to do things contrary to his law. It makes no sense to have a law and then go contrary to it. Right? So, what's this word resurrection then? This word resurrection, and we're going to look here in the Strong's Concordance so we can be clear about it. Revelation 20 and 6, and the word there is anastasis. This is in the Greek, of course. And that word speaks to a recovery of spiritual truths. We right back to the truth again. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So the truth has to be resurrected, so that those that are mentally dead, those that are spiritually dead, spiritually sacrificed. What do I mean by that? Earlier we read in Psalm 51. We jumping now. You gotta stay with me. You gotta stay with me. We gotta preach so that we teach, because this is a teaching church. Psalm 51, verse 17. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, thou wilt not despise. So, when you talk about sacrifices, think about how many leaders that have put their lives on the line, only to be betrayed, only for people to waste their time. I ain't talking about just black, I'm talking about white, black, Oriental, Chinese, you had them all. Martin Luther King was inspired by who? Gandhi. So this ain't a black thing. Gandhi was sacrificing. He was a sacrificial lamb. Dr. Martin Luther King, he was a sacrificial lamb. Malcolm X, Sojourner Truth. Harriet Tubman, she was trying to tell people they was slaves and everything. Harriet, go on, girl. I gotta go pick my garden. She's like, no, we can be free. We can get up. We can go to the north. And yes, let me go ahead and call me when you get. Right? She was sacrificing Underground Railroad. It wasn't only black people. White people was helping them get up there, helping them hide. Just like with the Jews, you had some Germans who was helping them Jews. Let's don't get caught up in the race now. Let's don't get caught up in that. You understand? It's a reality to it now. We can talk with it. We ain't gonna ignore it. We ain't colorblind in this church. The Qubtic church is black Messiah. You understand? But we ain't getting caught up in it. Right? So this sacrifice that it's talking about here is the sacrifice of those who have taken their lives and gave it to a worthy cause, so that their people could do better. And that's what Jesus was telling us. But be too busy following Greco-Roman mythology instead of understanding what is actually. Let's go to the book of Matthew chapter 10. Because the resurrection of these spiritual truths is leading to us talking about all of these things. And when you bring the truth, you become a sacrificial lamb. Jesus led by example. Alright? That's what it means when it say follow Jesus. I mean, throw your hands up and wave. Jesus fell on his face to pray. Jesus celebrated Rosh Hashanah and Passover and all of these different things that really have true meaning in our culture that we're going to get to, but they've been supplanted. Alright? Matthew chapter 10. We're going to start at verse 26. Matthew 10, verse 26. Fear them not therefore, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. So he knew stuff was covered up. That's what we're talking about now. Called Hellenization. That's what Greece is known as. Hell. You believe me? Just check it out. Go to Olympics, they don't have Greece on there. Okay. Y'all understand what's going on. What I tell you in darkness, that speak ye in the light, and what ye hear in the air, that preach ye upon the housetops. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. So your soul could die. That's the first death. The soul dying. How does your soul die? Your soul dies when you just been lied to for so long that you start living outside of who you are, believing things that have nothing to do with you. So I say, if you don't believe in Easter, that's your business. That ain't in the Bible. Original or otherwise. It ain't there. So we can tell you where it come from now. we can go there. Alright? So, you lose your way. You lose your soul. That's why the 23rd Psalm says, he does what to my soul? He restoreth my soul. You realize that word restore, that word shub in Hebrew is the same word for converted. He converted my soul. That word shub means to go back to the origin. That's what it means to restore your soul. To go back to the origin. You cannot be converted to a religion that you were never a part of in the first place. All you could do is go back to who you were. If you go anyplace else, you a slave. You a slave. You understand? So when your soul is restored, it means you have to go back to honoring your mother and your father. Not your neighbors. Not your invaders. Right? So it says, don't worry about them who could kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. But rather fear him, which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. They take your connection from the Most High away from you. Because you didn't love yourself enough. Your hair wasn't straight enough. Your nose wasn't small enough. Your lips wasn't small enough. Your skin wasn't bright enough. God made a mistake. Your eyes wasn't hazel enough. Now if you don't know, that's your business, man. I ain't knocking you. But I gotta tell the truth. Right? Gotta pick up my cross. It says in verse 29, are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not therefore, ye are of more value than many sparrows. Verse 32, whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him will I confess also before my Father which is in heaven. You gotta know what to confess before you start confessing. And when you call the tipster hotline, you better know something, eh? Right. But I heard the shots, but you know something? And I was inside. I was under the bed, so so you can't confess. You gotta know the truth first. So who was this Jesus? We have to go there, brother. We have to go there because we gotta know who we're celebrating. Who was Yahshua? And we ain't going on that line today because we gotta stick to the message. But in the Qubtic church of the Black Messiah, we understand that Jesus was sent where to be protected from Herod? Egypt. They don't have no record of no baby named Jesus in Egypt. I'm sorry. It ain't there. There's a record of a Tutankhamun. There's a record of a horse. These are names you just have to go and look at. There are records. Right? Yep. So you got to know who you're confessing before you start confessing. But whosoever shall deny me before men, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven. I know African. I'm a proud Bahamian. Let me just say that. But I couldn't be a Bahamian without Africa. You can't be picking dilly and you hate the dilly tree. It tastes good. But you hate the roots of the dilly tree? You can't love the fruit and hate the root. Don't work that way. Right? Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace but a sword. Uh-oh. Because when you start speaking the truth, some ruckus can start. We talked about it earlier. When we start to speak the truth, we break down the fabric of our society. Because many of it, or much of it, is built on lies. Right? So he said, he ain't come to bring peace. I came not to send peace, but a sword. That word sword is spelled S-W-O-R-D. Sword. The sacred word. That's what he came to bring. The sacred word. That's the sword. The tongue. Right? For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foe shall be they of his own household. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. What is he saying here? Is he saying, let's break up the family? That's not what he's saying. He's saying when you start to look for the truth, when you have a personal, but they love to use this word, personal relationship. A personal relationship with God. So what does that mean? It means it's between you and God. Sometimes mommy and daddy don't understand. Sometimes as a parent, your children don't understand. You understand? And so you have to continue living what you've been called to live, which is the truth. And that may cause some friction. But if your relationship with people who want to hold on to myths is more important than the truth, I'm sorry for you. That's all he's saying. Right? Verse 38. And he that taketh not his cross. This is when we get into the message now. He that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. Oh, so you must pick up your own cross. He has risen. It is over. It is. Yeah, he has risen. Are you risen? Are you risen? Huh? It says, he that findeth his life shall lose it. He that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. We have to point this out because this is not talked about. Because we lazy. We walking around saved. But it ain't the end yet. So you got to endure till the end. You only save something that you can use for later. Remember that. You saved it. You only save something that you can use for later. God needs you now. God needs you now. You got to get up and speak the truth now. Don't run in your house talking about you saved. Be breaking murder records every year. Yeah. You saved, you sending your children up there into the world where they ain't saved. So are you really saved? Come on, man. You got to figure out how to live this truth. You got to get it first. So what's the truth then? What's the truth? In one of our many publications in the Qubtic Church, the original 12 tribes of the scriptures, you read from page 41 and further. There's one of our ancestors, one of our guardian angelic hosts, by the name of Asaru. The Greeks refer to Asaru as Osiris. And he had a wife by the name of Aset, which the Greeks refer to her as Isis. They had a son named Horus, or Haru, who the Greeks called Horus. And this was the first royal family. The first royal family as it regards us as a people. In this cycle, we'll get into that another time, because things happen in cycles. Okay? But this Asaru was the first sacrificial lamb within what we know as the silsila. The silsila is an unbroken chain, a blood link. A blood link. Because remember, you got to be saved by the blood. Let's talk now. Let's be heard. This little light of mine, let it shine. Huh? You got to be saved by the blood. All right. So this silsila goes all the way from Asaru, being a sacrificial lamb, all the way to the Messiah, Yahshua the Messiah, some 2,000 years ago by some people's calendar, or 3,500 years ago, and all the way until this day and time when you are supposed to be resurrected. You, the children, you that are part of the silsila, that are supposed to be resurrected, not sitting around waving your hands and waiting for somebody to save you, the saving hand that you're looking for is at the end of your arm. So this Asaru, it is taught in our culture that this Asaru was cut up into 14 pieces. And this was the parable that was given. And that him being cut up into 14 pieces, his body was eventually spread out into 14 different areas. His wife had to go and find those pieces, bring them back together in order that she become pregnant to have a child that could resurrect his father. Now that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
Some woman running around looking for dead pieces of body. That's the story. I know the child, right?
Yeah.
The only part that they didn't find was the phallus, the male organ, right? The penis, right? And we heard this story for many years, but didn't understand it. Not knowing that this Asaru represented not just a person on earth, but a person in the celestial heavens. Every time you see the word heaven in the New Testament, it's the word Oranos. Please look this up. Don't accept what I'm saying. Please look it up. Every time you see this word heaven in the New Testament, it's the word Oranos, as in the word Orion, which is a star constellation, which means you can go outside most nights and see heaven. It's not further than the furthest star. It's in your backyard. Look up. Right? And that Orion originally was known as Sahu. That word Sahu means soul of Asaru. Genesis chapter 6 speaks about the sons of God coming to earth, but they never say from where. So where did they come from? They came from one of those mansions that's spoken about in John chapter 14. One of those mansions which are constellations such as Orion. That's where they came from. And they came to this earth, and there were 14 different groups of them. 14 different groups of them. One, or I should say they split up into 7 groups each. 7 of these groups had about 300 people. Another 7 had another 300. Some of them ended up in what you know as Africa today, and others ended up in what you know as Sumeria today. 7 of them were disagreeable, and 7 of them were agreeable. One of the 7 disagreeable tribes converted and merged in with the 7 agreeable tribes. Hence, you went from 14 to 13 tribes. This is why in the Bible you have 12 tribes, 13 tribes, and 14 tribes. We'll look at it in our fellowship one of these days. Okay? And what happened is, those tribes were scattered, just like the 14 pieces, they say, of Asaru's body. It wasn't his body. It was 14 pieces of chromosomes that had to be brought back together, that had to be utilized in a cloning process. Right? That's a better story, right? Right? And there had to be a ceremony performed. Alright? That ceremony is none other than the opening of the mouth ceremony, where once a ruler or the person that could afford that ceremony passed away, they used what is known as an adze. An adze. It's a tool used in carpentry to symbolically strike open the mouth of the deceased to allow symbolically the air to come in so that their soul can live on in Sahu or Orion. The eldest child of the deceased was then looked at as the resurrection of the deceased. Because in the Qubtic church we understand that eternal life comes by way of a male and a female coming together and having a child. And eventually those children that you have will also have children for eternity. As long as your DNA is physically on this planet, you are still alive. That's why when you speak, you could hear your parents coming to you sometimes when you're talking to your children. You see? But they supplanted that. They supplanted that. Let's go to Genesis chapter, before we even look in there, let's go to Genesis chapter 50. 50. So they really have to show you what they did. They supplanted Joseph's body for Asaru, or even Tut-Ankh-Amun, names that you will come to know in the future. The word Tut-Ankh-Amun simply means the child that has the key to the Most High. That came into the Bible as, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father but by me. That's all we're saying. Genesis chapter 50. And Joseph fell, verse 1, and Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. Remember, Israel's name originally was Jacob, and Jacob means supplanter. And 40 days were fulfilled for him, for so are the fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed. Who was embalming people? The Egyptians was embalming people, right? And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. 70 days is what? 70 days. 60, right? And 10, 70. That lines up exactly with the amount of time that Orion is not in the skies. Symbolically, Orion or Sahu, around the spring equinox, is sacrificed, but you don't see it anymore, and it comes back up around the beginning of summer. 70 days. Same thing is happening in this day and time where we celebrate Easter and the rising of God. Symbolically, the reality of it is that at the vernal equinox, somewhere around March 20th to 22nd, is when what happens? The days become longer than the nights, or the Son of God has overcome darkness. Don't believe me? Check it out. Look up the word Easter. It's a spring festival celebrating a god or goddess by the name of Astarte or Ishtar or Esther. As in Esther in the book of the Bible. That's the only book of the Bible that don't have the word God in it. Why doesn't it have the word God in it? Because they would have to put the real names there. Remember, they had to cover it over now to keep you in heaven. But originally it was not Esther or Ishtar. It was one by the name of Aset, who was the wife of Asaru. And the symbol of Aset is a symbol by is called the Thet, and it represents blood, because the blood really travels from mother to child, mother to child. That's why it was called mitochondrial Eve. Mitochondrial Eve. That's why a man leaves his father and mother and cleaves unto his wife, because all of their children will only have the mother's mitochondrial DNA. It's just the science of it. Alright? The best scientist in the world is God. And that's what Jesus was learning when he went to Egypt. Alright? So, they made it seem as if Jacob was the one being embalmed. He's getting this Egyptian, he's being embalmed as an Egyptian. but really and truly it was one known as Asaru. The Hebrew Grecian priests took the events of the original sacrificial shepherd Asaru as attempted to attribute it to their Jebusite Hyksos, which we read in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, the so-called Jews. They took it and attempted to attribute it to their Jebusite Hyksos rulers, Jacob An, Jacob Har, and Jacob El, through a process whereby they supplanted the body of Jacob into their versions of the Bible. Though in the original books of the Bible, they were originally recorded as the 14 pieces, tribes, or chromosomes which came forth out of the body of Asaru through the Zedra. Alright? In Hebrew, the word for seed is Zerah, which comes out of the word Zedra or Jedre. Furthermore, the sacrificial shepherd Asaru's life was further taken by the Jacobites, who are the supplanters, whereby in the Alexandrian Greek Septuagint, the Constantinian Roman Bible, and King James British Anglican versions of the Bible, it is said that Jacob saw a ladder in Genesis 28, which had angels on it, ascending to and descending from heaven. Alright? And that just takes us to another aspect of Asaru, and so far as his backbone was that of what we call, as it says here, the Z pillar. Something we get into another time. Alright? But over 5,000 years ago, this period of time was celebrated as around Friday. They saw this as the loss of Asaru, and on Monday was the resurrection of Asaru. And it's not just talking about one person, it's talking about us as a people resurrected. And that's what we have to celebrate. We have to get the truth, and we have to be resurrected. As in the first resurrection, which is known as the Karas, or Christ consciousness. And when we get this resurrection, then we become the agents of change. Then we become those who can go out there, speak the truth, and be free. We are those who have picked up our cross instead of just celebrating someone else that picked up a cross. It's that time. We have to. Otherwise, we shall surely be destroyed for a lack of knowledge. With that I say, Amen.